Part 5.
I was just saying to Tamara that one of the interesting things is that we have visitors on site today that you all know about, and no members of staff are absent today. I don't know if there's a correlation between the two. And it's no different.
But there is sadly no head teacher factory out there, churning out replica Amanda Phillipses. More is the pity. The standard of teaching is what so worries many parents. Sheila Lawler from the think tank Politea is concerned about trainee teachers coming into the profession.
Our Department for Children's Schools and Families' own figures say that around half the people coming into training for the B.Ed do not have two good A-levels. And that they are figures which are, I don't think can be disputed. They're not mine, they're the government's.
So you're saying they're not very bright?
No, I'm saying that the academic requirements are not very high.
There will be plenty of teachers listening to you say this sort of thing, teachers' union leaders as well, who will be outraged by what you're saying. And they'll point out that teaching, yes, is about having a fund of knowledge, but it's also about innate skills of communicating, and you can be frightfully clever with all the degrees in the world, still not be able to teach.
Here in Britain we say, we don't mind who comes into teaching, provided you have a GCSE in English and mathematics. That's all you need. Anyone can teach, says the DCSF poster, anywhere you go. And there's an entirely different idea of what a teacher does here.
So how do you attract the brightest and the best into teaching? And how do you get the best teachers into the most disadvantaged schools to try to narrow the gap? On the campuses of Britain, there is a new charity recruiting a new breed of young teacher.
By the second year, you will totally know what you're doing. You'll feel very comfortable, I have no doubt about that. It's definitely part of the learning curve.
On the Teach First programme.
Teach First is now one of the biggest graduate recruiters in the country. The task it set itself to try to close the attainment gap.
We have a mission to address educational disadvantage, and the way we do this is we go out, we find top graduates, such as you guys, and we transform you into exceptional teachers and leaders in all fields. And by doing that, we're going to do something to narrow that attainment gap.
For these prospective recruits, it's a 2-year commitment. After a 6-week summer school, teacher training happens on the job.
And we give you training. We only work in schools in challenging circumstances. So these are the schools we're asking you guys to go and put your enthusiasm and creativity in so you can make a real impact.
Intriguingly, the model for Teach First comes not from the world of education, but from the dark arts of management consultancy. I went to their headquarters in Canary Wharf in the City of London and met its founder and chief executive, Brett Wigdorts.
We went through thousands of inspection reports, and what you find from the data is the most important determinant of a child's success is how wealthy their parents are. The only two things that can change that correlation is excellent teaching and excellent school leadership. And I think that is obvious once you start thinking about it, because it's the same with any organization. If you think no business, no organization, and no school could be better than the quality of its staff.
So you approach this from a hard-nosed business perspective.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
Not as an educationist.
No, I don't have any education experience.
So it's a straightforward business approach.
Yeah.
Once they're qualified, about half of Teach First recruits stay in education. The rest use their experience as a springboard to other careers.
We're trying to create a movement of leaders who are really dedicated to the belief that children from the poorest backgrounds deserve the best education, and this is something important in their life.
So you're not turning out the next generation of young people who will staff these great, rich buildings around us. That's not the idea.
That's not the idea. Some of them might, because the people we're getting, are great leaders. I think they're going to be leaders not just in education or in policy and charity, but probably many will be business leaders. And if they do, that's also great, because it means the leaders of industry will have experience working with kids in the challenging areas and have a great understanding of what these kids are capable of.
Teach First has been a big factor in the turnaround of this school, Bethnal Green College of Technology, according to its headmaster, Mark Keary.
This is the first year that we have not been on some hit list or other, whether it's failing to hit the 30% 5A to C, including English and Maths, or the previous floor targets, or special measures, or the DCSF persistent truancy list. We've been through kind of all of them, really. I think there must be an award for that, and come out the other end.
If we say we are all similar, what would the other part of the sentence look like?
The upside for heads like Mark Carey when they take Teach First recruits is that they get a fresh intake of idealistic young teachers on the cheap.
Okay, so this part is different for everyone's table. The part at the bottom is the same.
The downside is that when a recruit like Marlon Evans Sinclair first enters the classroom, he has had only 6 weeks of training.
What does respect actually mean? Shah.
You're playing outside and there's someone sitting down, you should always try and make them come and play with you, even if they're like...
So can I call it including people?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You're a 13-year-old boy, difficult to teach, and you come along, fresh out of university, you've had 6 weeks to learn how to do it. I mean, 30 maybe kids like him in that class. And they're all looking at you and thinking, what does this guy know? Nothing. And they're right. They don't. You don't know anything.
You could say I have no formal training, but I wouldn't necessarily...
Don't.
I do feel though...
fact.
Not necessarily. I mean, I feel that the formal training that I have is after the 6 weeks. The training doesn't stop at the 6 weeks. They're not guinea pigs for me.
They're not guinea pigs.
Not at all.
It sounds a bit like it.
Not at all. Not at all. I think the way how my personal approach to teaching is, and I think for the majority of Teach First as well, is the fact that we have the drive, the energy, we want to give back. Okay, well done. Thank you very much.
We've probably had close to 16, 17 Teach First participants over the last 3 years. Every single participant that we've got currently who's beyond year 1 has an additional whole school responsibility. Not because we give it to them, but simply because they're able to take that on and they're able to deliver and make a difference.
What are you going to do at the end of your 2 years?
It's not decided yet. I think I'm going to stay on for a while. I really do like this.
You think so?
Yeah.
But you might not. You might go off and
The option's
work
there.
for an
The option's
accountancy
there.
firm or
No.
make money in the city.
I've never been drawn to private sector per se. I've always particularly worked in the public sector
Right,
because
but you may not stay in teaching.
not in the classroom. Doesn't mean I'm not going to stay in education.
The head, Mark Carey, knows exactly what he wants to achieve at his school. Too ambitious? Judge for yourself.
Now, what's the definition of success for us? It has to be that every day with every child, we close that gap just a little. And at some point in time, maybe 10, 20 years down the line, when somebody actually stands up in the House of Commons as Prime Minister, maybe they're black female, Asian female, East European background, who knows, one of the sort of kids who comes and learns in a school like this, one of ours, when that happens, and it will happen, that will be when we've realised that we're going to cross that divide in a way that it needs to. That's what we're here for.
10 minutes and I'm going to put a timer on the boards.
Teach First is helping to bring about a real redistribution, taking some of the brightest new potential teachers and getting them working with the children who need them most. But what happens if you try this sort of structural change on a much larger scale? What happens when the government decides, as the last one did, that some state schools should be treated a bit more like private schools, given more money and more freedom, and called academies? 15 years ago, this was the worst school in the country, or so the government said at the time, Hackney Downs. So they razed it to the ground, and they built a new one. They called it Mossbourne Academy, and Ofsted says it's one of the best in the country. An outstanding school.
Hey, nice straight line, year sevens. Face the front, no speaking.
Mossbourne is the flagship of the academy policy. It's a school some politicians love to visit and hold up as the future of education.
Part 5 questions. Sheila Lawlaw, who speaks for a think tank, blames teachers for underachievement. What evidence does she give? What does Teach First do?